When it comes to representing both masculine and feminine qualities in anime characters, it can be somewhat confusing because of how androgynous anime characters can be. And we'll find that there are these very subtle differences and tips and tricks that we can use to kind of emphasize a more feminine quality within a female anime character design. So with that being said, hey guys, my name is Matt. Welcome to another video by artincontext.org, where we explore various art related topics. And in today's video, we will be breaking down the process of how to draw an anime girl. So with that being said, let's get into it. Now, this tutorial is done on a digital device. However, all drawing processes and steps can be transferred to traditional mediums, so you can use whatever you have available to you in terms of materials and stationery. Now, the process of how to draw an anime girl is quite simple, where we start by establishing some simple guidelines for our anime girl sketch. And as we work with these guidelines, we'll slowly start to position the various features, but also as we do so, we'll spend some time on features and understanding how to kind of tweak them and change them and kind of shape them in a way that does represent a more feminine type of quality, and therefore resulting in an anime girl design. So with that being said, the way in which we're going to start is by shaping the head and facial proportions. Now, we can start by shaping the head of the anime girl by establishing a simple elliptical shape with a few guidelines. We can draw a horizontal line through the middle with 3 evenly spaced lines beneath that first horizontal line. Now from there, we can move on to working through the different features, starting with the eyes. There are many simplified shapes you can work with, from circles to hexagonal shapes. It all depends on the various expressions you are intending to create within your character. However, we want to keep the nose very simple by establishing 2 small marks representing the nostrils, and we can also add a structure for the mouth near the last line with the guidelines. Now, the intention with this early stage is to kind of keep it simple, kind of sketch out the general placement of these features using the guidelines. And once you understand where these various features should be placed, you can then start to think about the type of expression you'd like to represent in the face, especially within the eyes. And this is where we can really consider the different shape for what we would like the eyes to be. So circles tend to be a bit more surprised expressions or associated with surprised expressions, whereas more hexagonal shapes kind of have a more resting quality effect, or maybe even a more brooding quality within the face. But otherwise, we can continue from here by lightly erasing the drawing to leave behind some ghost lines that will assist us in refining the drawing. Now, this is where we can now work in more refined details to give more feminine qualities to the face. Now again, we are going to work on the eyes, so we can embolden the upper eyelids. Naturally, it doesn't matter what type of eye shape you have, but already this is a unique way of kind of emphasizing a feminine quality, because it suggests that the eyelashes are longer than that of a masculine character or male character, and therefore kind of gives it a more feminine touch. Otherwise, as we continue, we can also keep the shadowing around the nose slightly lighter than that of the nostrils in tonal value, so we can also make it triangular as well in shape to emphasize the pointed quality of a nose. When it does come to more simplified features within anime characters, the nose tends to be quite pointed and kind of represents a more similar shape to that of a feline or a cat, and that's kind of what we want to represent, especially in a female character. Having a very subtle nose is a great way to also further feminize or contextualize the character as a feminine character. So now as we continue, we can also do a similar thing around the eyes by adding some light shading to give them a little bit more shape and dimension, and this can be done around the eyebrows as well to suggest that they are basically protruding and therefore casting a shadow beneath them. Now, when it comes to the eyebrows, we can also make them slightly thin to kind of have a more feminine quality as well. So this is just another way to emphasize a more feminine touch within our anime character. And another way to kind of feminize the face as we kind of move our way down to the lips is to give them slightly more volume, as this makes them seem a lot more voluptuous and therefore a little bit more feminine in shape. But as we continue and kind of work our way through the various features, the eyelashes can also be quite long and dark in the top eyelid shape. So as this will give another feminine quality to the eyes. The nose, however, can be very subtle, once again only defined by slight shadowing through a very soft shading or a very soft tonal value. We can also start to draw in the iris and the pupils as these semicircles that curve to the bottom of the eye. We want to imagine that the upper eyelid naturally is hovering over the top of the eyeball, and this is going to only reveal part of the actual eyeball and therefore part of the features within the eye. Now, we can also have these strong lines above the eyes to define the structure of the eyelid beneath the eyebrows, and we can also draw in more subtle line work to represent the bottom of the eyelashes to further emphasize the eyes. Now, we can proceed to add in little moments of highlights as well within the pupils to suggest a reflection of light off of the glassy surface of the eyes, and we can also enhance the eyes further by adding some shading along the top section of the eyes beneath the top eyelid eyelids. Again, we want to still maintain some sort of realistic quality of physics in terms of how shadows are cast along the face due to some protruding features. And in the case of the eyes, we want to kind of maintain that quality of shadowing above the top section of the eyeball, as if a shadow was being cast by the upper eyelid onto the surface of the eyeball. This will define a quality of overshadowing that is established by the top eyelid and just give it a slightly more realistic nuance to your character, and also just giving it a little bit more of an interesting three-dimensional quality. As we continue, the opening of the mouth can also be established in many ways, so this is also really subjective and depends on what kind of personality or expression you're trying to portray. But in this case, we're working with a very resting face type of expression, so we do want to make sure we give both the top and bottom lip structure some shape, but we can also take it slightly further by giving them some highlights, again to kind of emphasize a little bit of moisture on the lips. We do want to make sure that both the upper and lower lips are quite large or larger than that of a male character, and kind of giving them some volume does once again feminize the character's features a little further. When it comes to the mouth, we always want to think about what the eyes are doing. So if the eyes are kind of in this resting position as we have kind of represented them in this particular drawing, we then want to obviously find some sort of consistency between the expression in the eyes and the mouth. So in this case, we can just have a very subtle opening within the mouth. But otherwise, as we continue, we're going to move on to one of the biggest contextualizing features, and that is shaping the hair and the head. Now this is where we can start to be a little bit playful with the structure of the hair and how it forms around the head, and we want to start thinking about what kind of hairstyles kind of carry different types of connotations or personality traits. So we want to make sure that the hair also hovers above the head. This way it will suggest more volume, and this is a more natural way of our hair is actually kind of positioned on top of the head. We don't want to be drawing the hair on top of the circular skull structure, but slightly above it to suggest that the hair is actually growing out from the surface of the skull. Now you do want to take your time trying out different structures of hair around the head, and you also want to think about how the hair once again will enhance the character. So think about hairstyles, consider looking at some references on the internet, but you can also start to play around with how you can then represent different textural qualities in the hair. But you really want to make sure you are settled and convinced about the type of hairstyle before kind of committing, because we will work with but you do want to make sure that you are settled and convinced about the type of hairstyle you want to commit to, because we will be filling in the hair quite a lot, and this will give the character a very definitive look. So you do want to make sure that you have decided the hairstyle before committing to actually drawing in the hair. But once you have decided on your hairstyle and you have lightly worked out the shape and proportions with your anime girl drawing, you can then proceed to draw the hair, starting with the hairline. Now once you have decided on the shape and the hairstyle, you can then start to fill it in, making sure you fill in the entire shape of the hair structure. This is again a very specific way of kind of creating a hairstyle that works with this particular style of anime. But otherwise, as you continue, you do want to slowly work through a series of lengths, thinking about where you would like the hair to fall and at what length you would like it to be in terms of where it falls on the shoulders or above, and so on. As you continue to fill in the hair, we should start to see how the character starts to become a little bit more contextualized due to the kind of effects of the hair around the head, and we can also establish some surrounding features to further contextualize the profile. Now this is where we can start to kind of enhance the hair by integrating highlights that flow with the structure of the hair. So try using a lighter color or a lighter medium to really bring out the quality of highlights with the hair strands. Now this is where you kind of work in these streaks of highlights that flow with the shape of the hair. You want to establish also these kind of zigzag patterns along the curved surface areas of the hair structure, and by doing this it will give the impression of highlights along the strands to kind of represent that shimmer on the surface area of the hair fibers. You can take it further by making one side of the hair slightly more illuminated than the other areas of the hair, having this juxtaposition between darker and lighter moments and kind of emphasizing the quality of a light source being present on one side. These highlights can then become single lines that define strands that move down the hair structure as it falls, and you want to have a combination of both darker and lighter moments in the hair to keep that consistency between shadowing and highlights within your entire character. So again, thinking about a light source, thinking about representing shadows in all features, whether it's the face and the hair, should remain a consistent theme within your character design. Now you do want to make sure you take your time with both darker and lighter marks, creating thicker bunches of hair with single strand sections that flow in between, clean. You can have these kind of sporadic moments where hair fibers kind of flow in different directions to just emphasize a more realistic quality of how sometimes hair just kind of responds to the wind or the environment. So you can play around with these single fibers of hair kind of flowing in different directions. Otherwise, try to think of how the hair would fall on a real person and apply those concepts to your character. As we continue, however, you do want to have a little bit more of a minimalistic quality to your character design, and you can keep the hair structure more uniform in this sense. So this is providing you with a few options of how to define the flow and the placement of the hair on the character, but ultimately you can apply these concepts to your own character design, whether it is shorter or longer hair, or you can keep it more minimalistic without too many highlights. And then lastly, as a last feature, once we understand the actual shape and the formation of these various features, and we've put them together, assembled them to create a very unique feminine kind of anime character, we can then consider how we fill our character in with color. So this step is more of an extra step to think about, but adding color and filling in the character can be a great way to think about the overall design. This provides you with the option of having a colored version or monochromatic version of your character, and then it can also kind of play into different ethnicities. However, this is a more subjective decision and really has an effect on the overall design of the character. So thinking about these various features, thinking about the color palette is a kind of a last step in terms of how you would like the overall design of your character to be. And this can relate to their backstory, history, ethnicity, their stylistic kind of and this can relate to their backstory, their history, their choice of style and fashion, and so on. Otherwise, guys, this is kind of more of a last step, and once again, always consider looking at some references to kind of assist you in your decision making process. But otherwise, guys, that is it for today. A few simple steps on how to draw an anime girl. Some key things to remember is first, establish some guidelines. Again, we're still working with the principles of proportions that we apply to normal anatomy of just any kind of human, both male and female. So you want to kind of work with these guidelines in terms of placements, and then it's about really kind of animating those features to kind of create either these more feminine or masculine qualities. In this case, we can really embolden those eyelashes, make the lips slightly more voluptuous, have a more petite nose. Again, there are many ways to kind of feminize the features, and once we have done that, we can really emphasize or further contextualize the character by playing around with the hairstyle, which is a big part of drawing any type of anime character. And then lastly, think about your light source and consistency with your light source in terms of the placement of your shadows in various features, including the hair as well. But otherwise, guys, that is it for today. Thanks again for tuning in. If you are interested in similar or related content, please do let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear back from you guys and get into kind of ideas or topics you would like us to do. So please do let us know, and you can show your support by liking and subscribing. That helps us to grow the channel, which enables us to make more art related content for you guys. But that is it from me today. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, see you in the next video. Cheers.